Hey Crafty Mavens, it's Vanessa here with my Stash It Up video for March. And today we are going to start out by using some shimmers paints on a silhouette cut file that I cut on my silhouette and just left on the cutting mat. I first prepped the paper with some gesso, and now I'm just going to take those colors and I'm going to go ahead and paint the cut file right on my cutting mat. And I'm using the actual colors that I'm using were all the ones that came in the shimmers, came out with a color kit for the month. I think this was their March color kit, I believe. And I had gone ahead and purchased that, so I'm using the colors from that, which were Good as Gold, Pining for You, Celery, and a Vibes in Pink Moscato. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just taking those colors that came in that color kit, and I am painting up this cut file. You'll see I'm not going to do the whole thing on camera, but I have a circle that I've cut, and I'm just combining the two greens on that circle cut file. And then the flower, I am using the pink for the flower, and then the leaves, I'm going to do the same thing and use the two greens on the leaves that are as a part of that flower. And I'm going to go ahead and just color that up. And what I have done is, for my stash kit that I'm using for the month of March, or at least one of the stash kits that I'm using for the month of March, I went ahead and actually built a stash kit around these shimmers paints. And so I took the kit and basically built a stash kit around it. I will have the link below to my channel where I show that stash kit that I put together, which is based off of these paints. If you're interested in that, it will be down below, and so you can always jump over to see everything that I put in that kit. Now, here you see I've gone ahead and let that cut file dry, and so everything's all dried, and I've now taken the piece of paper that I decided to use for my background was just a pink pattern paper, and I took some white acrylic paint and just sort of painted it onto the background of that pink pattern paper. And I just wanted to do that just so that it kind of gave a base, a nice base for my circle. From if you saw at the beginning of the video, I had put in the March mood board. And when I saw the mood board, I really was inspired by mostly the wreath on the mood board. And so I wanted to kind of have a wreath design or a circular design on this layout. So that's kind of where I was taking the inspiration of putting a wreath design on this page. So you see here, I've got that circle glued down on my background. And now I only lightly glued it down because I knew I was going to do some hand stitching. And so here you see I'm just taking my little needle tool and punching out the circles around the wreath. I'm kind of using my finger as kind of a spacer. I don't need it to be perfect. I'm just kind of using my finger as sort of a way to poke the holes and give somewhat of the same spacing all the way around my circle. And I'm then going to take this floss in this green, and I use about 3 strands. Sometimes I do 6, depending on how much I want my stitching to stand out. In this case, I wanted it to be a little bit subtle, so I took just 3 of the strands. And so I am not going to do anything too fancy. I thought about doing, one of the fancier stitches that you kind of see people doing now. But I went instead with just doing a back stitch on this. So here you see I'm just going to show it for a couple of stitches here, and then it's pretty straightforward. If you don't know how to do a back stitch, let me know and I will definitely demonstrate it on another video. But I went ahead and did that for the entire circle on my background. Now, I also decided that the cut file, I was going to go ahead and back that cut file with some of the pattern papers that I have in my kit. And I left this in, but ultimately, once I've gotten everything cut out and I've backed this entire flower, I ended up deciding that I did not like it. So this is one of those, I left it in the video, but you're actually not going to see this cut file come back and actually make it onto the layout. I think for me personally, I probably would have liked this idea better if I had either left the cut file just painted and not backed it as well, or if I had have cut it out again and not painted it and then backed it with just the flower itself, the outline being white. I think I would have liked that better. But ultimately, once I had it backed, I decided that I really just didn't like the way it looked. And so I scrapped the idea of using that flower. And you'll see in a second here, you're going to see what I decided to do instead. So after I did all that work and decided against it, I took my photo and I am just going to take some other pattern papers that I pulled from my kit, and I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of them to back my photo. I have this chevron green and then this pink on pink polka dot that you see here, and those are going to make up my 2 mats behind my photo. Because I'm going for a wreath design, this really becomes quite a simple layout now that I have all that stitching done around my circle. So everything comes together from this point fairly quickly because I have the wreath design. I know that that's the design I'm going for, and I keep the embellishing very simple. Now, in my kit, I had actually all these papers mostly came from a paper pad. And so one of the papers in that paper pad were these flowers. So I went ahead and took that pattern paper and fussy cut all of these flowers out. And those are what is going to make up the 2 main clusters on this layout. So you see here, I am just going to lay out how I want my clusters. They're kind of flowing down on a diagonal around that circle. And I'm just taking some other bits and pieces from that kit, and I am just going to embellish in both of those floral clusters that I have around the wreath. And here you see I have a piece of paper there that has a whole bunch of tiny words on it. I've actually made my own tiny word. They're not stickers. They're basically, I have a Word document and I've made my own sort of tiny words. If that's something that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below, and I will, maybe for my next video or next month's video, try to do a tutorial on doing tiny words. And then I might even try to see if I can share the cut file, or the Word file I should say, in the Crafty Maven Facebook group or something like that. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see. I'd be happy to share that with everyone. And so as you see, while I've been talking about the tiny words, I've just gone ahead and added some puffy hearts in my clusters. I've got some butterfly wood veneers. That also kind of is a nod to the mood board as well, because there was butterflies in that. And as a finishing touch for my clusters anyway, I am taking these Spiegel Mom Scraps sequins that were also actually part of that Shimmers color kit. And I'm going to use some of the larger green ones in the centers of the flowers. And then I will go back at the end of the video, you'll see, and add some other sequins just randomly throughout the layout. Now, the last thing that I do once I've gotten everything glued down is I did go in and put my title. And I'm using the wreath, the border of that wreath, I guess I should say, as the placement for my title. So that gave me a great place to keep my title sort of connected to at least one of the clusters, so it's not floating. And then I was able to sort of make it kind of flow around the wreath. And I just used that to stick on my title all the way around. And this one is called In Full Bloom. And this is just really a simple photo of a flower from the botanical gardens. I will have actually more layouts that will be about our trip to the botanical gardens. And so there really isn't a whole lot of journaling for this one, because it's going to go with some other photos that I will be, you know, doing layouts for this trip. And so I will probably just do one big sort of journaling spot on one of them, and then this will be on its own. So here's a look at the still photos. If you have any questions, just leave them down below, and don't forget to hit that button and subscribe to the Crafty Maven, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye, everybody.